Wow, you guys look so bright and gorgeous. Thanks for letting me be in the space with you. All right, how many of you guys have ever tried to manifest something and something crazy happened where it just didn't show up? Anyone ever happen? You know, it could be in love, it could be in money, it could be in anything, right? And it's incredibly frustrating. And so when my intuition developed, I decided, because let's be honest, when your intuition develops, people want you to kind of be the circus act, right? They're like, tell me my future, tell me what's going to happen. And what would happen is I'd look into somebody's soul, and I'd be like, oh my God, they're going to keep creating the same exact thing over and over and over and over again. How do I help them fix that? So I realized, I went on the radio one day, and I was on the radio, and this lady calls me up, and she says, I want to know if my husband cheated on me, okay? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Because the real truth is I knew the answer, right? And so I said, and this is the moment that it just really changed for me, because I said, you know what? Let me just ask this question. Your dad cheated on your mom, right? And you had previous boyfriends that cheated on you, correct? Yes. I go, let's just fix that pattern. You know what I mean? So that you don't have to keep creating that same thing over and over and over and over again. And so then I started working with clients in a deeper way. Like, what is this pattern? And I've worked on over 25,000 people one-on-one, which is a crazy, crazy-ass number. And the reason that I did that was because I like puzzles. I wanted to see how people were wired and how they got that way. And so basically, what happened is by looking at people and looking through their soul and seeing what was up, I discovered a lot of fascinating things about how we wire ourselves as human beings. And I decided to do an experiment with Mind Valley and Vision. We decided to create a program called Unlimited Abundance. And I wanted to take my cliff notes of working on everybody, and I wanted to see, okay, everyone pretty much, in my experience, has the similar and same 24 abundance blocks, okay? And I said, let's do a course where over the next 12 weeks, we go through all the abundance blocks, we clear people, and we're going to do an experiment. And at the end of the experiment, I want to know how much cash or money or gifts or abundance people generated after that. And so I said, can you guys make a little promise to me that after you do this course, send me an email telling me how much money you made over and above what you currently make right now, okay? And so I did it with only 400 people, and not everyone sent me in the emails. But of the people that did send me in the emails, they manifested an extra $3 million over and above what they currently had, and that's on an average about $10,000 a person. So I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you for being my social experiment to prove that this stuff really works. And so my favorite thing to do now is just really help people get over your abundance blocks, and I'm going to guide you guys later on in a meditation so that you yourself can start experiencing this stuff just like they did. So how's that sound to you? All right, so how my intuition thing works is basically what I do is I take my energy, I go into somebody's energy field, and when I say go into it, I see it, I hear it, I see pictures of what happened, I hear ages of what happened, and I go in there, and I can say, oh, your mom and dad had a money issue, and you duplicated that, and that's why you're 40 years old, and you're having that same problem. And crazy things happen because this energy actually has kind of a mass to it. And here's what I mean by that. One of the participants who did the Unlimited Abundance was Deborah. And Deborah sent me her email, and she said, Christie, I want to show you this email. And she had her medical reports in it, okay? And she goes, you don't know what this means, but here's what this means. Before I released my abundance blocks, I was living in a very negative home. I didn't have anything positive in my life. I had hurt myself. I'm walking with a cane, and the medical report is saying that I could have lost a kidney, okay? And now the new medical report that I'm sending you means I'm not going to lose a kidney, because here's what happened over those 3 months. I started eliminating my abundance blocks. I no longer walk with a cane. I hike every day. I moved out of my negative environment. I found a man. She said, a good one. And basically, my doctor can't believe it, because I'm not going to lose a kidney now. And you would think, how could working on abundance blocks literally affect her physically? Well, because in working with so many people, what I realized is a lot of your physical aches and pains are actually your patterns that have like this mass with all the pictures of reality and all your thoughts and your feelings and your ideas about how life works. So I'm going to kind of show you how you create a reality. So imagine you're, a little baby, mom pops you out. And what happens is your brain waves are generally in theta. So you as a human are starting to download and duplicate the reality around you, okay? And as you grow up, you just keep imprinting within you thoughts, feelings, beliefs, ideas, things that happened, and basically you become you, and you're filled with all these thoughts, feelings, and decisions. Now, that in and of itself is okay. An interesting thing happened. When I was working on clients and they'd come to me and they'd have abundance blocks and they'd be 30, 40, 50 years old and they have these abundance blocks, when I traced them back, most of the first imprinting occurred 0 to 7. So that's why they've been doing all these meditation techniques or all these self-improvement things, and they say, Christie, it's not working. Like, I keep clearing the same stuff. How come it's not actually changing my life? And the secret and the clue that I learned by working on so many people is 0 to 7 is usually where the first imprint is. And if you don't pull out that layer, things don't shift as easily. I'm not saying they don't or they couldn't or they kind of get better, but then you go along the road and it gets a little better and then wham, something else happens, right? And that's because you didn't get the first core imprinting. And so I'm going to show you guys how to find that today. Now, how many of you guys have ever done a vision board? And you do a vision board and you think, hey, I'm going to go manifest this amazing goal. I'm going to go make $1 million. And then within a couple of weeks, some kaboom, like something happens in your world or your reality where the washing machine breaks, the car breaks, you lose your job. Has anyone ever had that happen? You're like, what in the heck just happened? I just set this big, amazing goal, and oh my God, now my world's falling apart. Well, what happens is you have a conflictual reality. I call it cross purposes. You have two competing purposes fighting you, okay? So one part of you is saying, I want to have money in abundance, and I want to have more than enough, and the universe completely and totally supports me and has my back, right? And then this other part of you is going, are you crazy? That stuff doesn't work. You're not abundant. How many of you guys have those dual thoughts that pop in whenever you do your affirmations? Well, those are your patterns, okay? And those are an amazing love gift, because here's what's happening. As soon as that negative stuff comes up, you can use the techniques that I'm going to show you, and you could say, oh my God, I'm finding a cross purpose. I'm finding something in my universe that's a conflictual reality, and now I have the opportunity to change it because it just showed up in my world, okay? So how many of you guys, when that stuff happens, the normal instinct, of course, is like, are you kidding me? This stuff is happening again, right? Wouldn't it be cool to look at it from the point of view of, oh my gosh, it's another pattern that I get to uncover, that I get to change, that I get to zap away. So that's how I actually look at my patterns when they come up. I was working with a client. I had taken some clients to Hawaii for a trip, which was really fun. And I all of a sudden I looked at her and I go, "You don't like when your patterns show up." She goes, "No, I hate it." I go, "You know what? I love it because I know I can change it right then, right?" She goes, "Oh, I'm going to rephrase it." And so what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through an exercise where you're going to delete and find, we're going to help you find and delete all the patterns. Now, patterns that are negative would be anything that's fearful, worry, guilt, shame, anger, depression, anything that would contract you or suppress you, okay? When I look at somebody's abundance, I can look at anyone's energy and pretty much in 2 seconds tell you if they're abundant or not abundant. And how would I know that? Well, when I look at an abundant person, their energy is radiating out 20, 30 feet all the way around them, and they're open to give and receive simultaneously, okay? When I look at somebody who is not abundant, what their reality is doing is it's very tight around them, and it's kind of contracted, okay? And so I'm going to guide you through a meditation where you expand your energy, and just that one thing alone will actually start shifting how you perceive things in your world. I had a client, and when she came to me, she said, "Christie, she was like in her 30s, and she goes, I knew I should have called you sooner. My guidance told me to do so, but I kept avoiding it." And she said, "What happened was I just had this really bad date, and this date was basically the accumulation of every guy I've ever dated in one guy." And she goes, "I knew my patterns were talking to me." And she'd had this history of, and I didn't know this till after I'd worked with her, but she had this history of bosses who hit on her, and then she'd have to leave the job. She had this history of men cheating on her, men abandoning her, and it was always tied to money, okay, love and money tied together. So I said, okay. And she didn't tell me any of this. I just knew her first name, and she showed up on the phone with me. And I said, okay, it seems to me that when you were born, actually even a little bit before you were born, your mom had such huge emotional trauma and worry and upset, and she hated men. Does that make sense? She goes, absolutely. And I go, okay, well, don't tell me anymore. And it also feels like at 10 years old, 18 years old, 27-year-old, and I started naming all these other ages. I said, these are the ages which you also had something, felt those same emotions, right? Abandoned, you hate men, men take your money, like all sorts of crazy stuff. She goes, absolutely. I said, so what happened? And she said, you know what happened is my dad left my mom while I was in utero, okay? And sometimes I'll find these patterns on people, and it actually happened before they were born, okay? And my dad had left my mom, so my mom is obviously back in the day, you know what I mean? Women weren't as empowered as we are now, thank God, thank God we're empowered now. And, and so she didn't have a job or anything, you know what I mean? So she has a new baby, she doesn't have a job, and her husband left her, okay? And she goes, in those other ages you labeled, my dad came into my life and then left me. So 10 years old, he came in and left me, 17 or 18, he came into and left me, and then all the other ages, I had a guy who left me or a boss who did something crazy, And so anyway, we clear that pattern, and I connected with her 6 months later. She had sent me an email, and then I called her, and she had said, I actually met, first off, she started her own business, and she met a man who was basically nothing like any of those other patterns. So that's how remarkable and quickly shifting it can be if you actually find the root thing that's creating the real problem. So if you guys still have your problem, I promise you haven't found your root thing that's holding it all together, okay? So we're going to go into a meditation, and I'm going to guide you in how to find your root thing. So step one is we're going to locate the pattern. And step 2, we're going to delete the pattern. And we're all going to do this from a very expanded space. All right. So every one of you intuitively and inherently knows when I say to you, connect to the light. So close your eyes. And I'm going to have you take your energy up 300 feet where you see, sense, or feel the light. Now, everyone inherently knows where the light is when you say, hey, I'm going to pray about it, or I'm going to connect to source about it, or I'm going to connect to love about it. So take your energy up 300 feet where you see, sense, or feel the light, and allow this light to start coming into the top of your head. And this light is pure abundance. This light is pure abundance. And it's truth. So allow this light to come in and start connecting you to the truth of who you are. And allow this light to come into your eyes so you can see the truth of who you are. You're safe, you're loved, you're supported, you're abundant by nature. And allow this light to come into your ears, opening you up so you can hear guidance. And allow this light to come into your throat, opening it up so that you can have this brilliant connection between your heart and your head. And allow this light to come in to your heart, opening it up so that you can feel the truth, you can feel abundance. And allow the light to come into your solar plexus, washing away fear, worry, guilt, shame, any of those lower emotions. And allow the light to come into your hip area, your stomach area, washing away anywhere you felt disempowered. And allow the light to come into your root area, opening it up so that you can stand in the new reality. You can stand in your abundance. And allow the light to come into your legs, your knees, your calves, your feet. And allow the light to come into the center of the planet. Now, there's this interesting energy in the center of the planet. It's a dimensional energy, and it just feels safe, supported, loved. And when you connect to it, you naturally just want to take a deep breath. So connect to this energy that feels like mother's love, that feels supported, feels grounding. So we want to feel safe in this world, so bring that energy back up into you. So we're going to connect the light from both directions, above and below. Allow this light to come up into your legs, into your hips, into your stomach, into your heart, into your throat, into your head. You're now connected from above and below. And because I know that you guys are abundance by nature, I would love it if you could expand your energy out 360 degrees all the way around you, like a big sunshine, radiating it out from your heart. And take this energy out 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. And find the space that feels abundant and cozy. All right, and I'm going to now ask you guys some questions to help find your patterns. Now, how this intuition stuff works is the first answer that pops in your head before you can actually think about it. So the first answer that pops in within 1 to 2 seconds is the answer, okay? So I want you to think of a time when you didn't have enough money. What age is that? Okay, because I know how these patterns work, in order to have attracted that into your energy field, there was probably an earlier event that matched that energy. So when is the first imprint, the first age in which you had the vibration or the pattern of I don't have enough money? What is the first age that you have the pattern of not enough money? And did you duplicate that energy from your mom, from your dad, from yourself, from someone else? Now, usually all the thoughts and feelings that go with that event or this pattern are in, on, and around you, because your soul is bigger than your body. So I want you to point to the part of this vibration that feels the heaviest. When you think of not having enough money, where in, on, and around your body does it feel heavy? And point to that energy. And then I want you to ask, what's the main emotion tied into it? What is the main emotion tied into it? Okay, so I want you to now bring in a lot of light. Okay, so you have light coming in your body. I want you to bring in a lot of light into that space. And I want you to just kind of think along with me. I'm going to clear and transmute this across all time, dimension, space, and reality. So we're bringing in light and we're blowing it up with the energy statement. We're going to clear and transmute it, instantly vaporize it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. And we're doing it from that place because we want to get every single incident that's tied to the pattern. So everywhere you didn't have enough money, we're going to clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Everywhere you didn't feel supported by the universe with your money, clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Everywhere you didn't have enough when you needed it, clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. I can feel that some of you guys need to bring in some more light to that place. Okay, so some of you guys who are kind of backing away from it, bring in more light into this pattern. We're going to clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. So most of people's abundance stories come from their mom and dad. So I want you to ask inside, what was my mom's main story about money? Did your mom have plenty of it? Did she say there's not enough? Did she say you guys cost me money? What was your mom's main story about money? And ask, what was my mom's main emotion about money? And then I want you to ask, at what age did I duplicate this pattern? At what age did I duplicate this pattern? At what age did I play out this pattern? Okay, point to the heaviness of it, wherever it feels heavy or tight or contracted, wherever you feel this pattern, point to it. And bring in a lot of light right to that part. Okay, and then we're going to clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. We're going to clear and transmute everywhere you duplicated your mom's pattern about money across all time, dimension, space, and reality. We're going to clear and transmute everywhere you're living your mom's story about money. Clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, reality. Clearing and transmuting everywhere and anywhere. I'm carrying this burden from my mom's energy because I was trying to heal her. Clear and transmute that across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Any other emotion that I have tied to this, clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Okay, one more time, you guys. Bring in a lot of light right to that pattern, okay? Today's the day you can get rid of it. Okay, so clear and transmute that across all time, dimensions, space, and reality. Okay, so let's ask this question. What was my dad's story about money? What was my dad's story about money? That there's not enough? That you should be stingy? Greedy? What was your dad's story about money? What was your dad's main emotion about money? What age did I duplicate my dad's energy about money? What age did I duplicate my dad's energy about money? And what's my main emotion about money? Okay, point to where it feels heavy or tight or contracted. Okay, so bringing in a lot of light into that space. Clear and transmute it across all time, dimension, space, reality. We're going to clear and transmute. Everywhere you duplicated dad's story about money across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Clear and transmute. Everywhere you're living your dad's story about money. Clear and transmute that across all time, dimension, space, and reality. Anywhere and everywhere you're living the lie that you have to carry your dad's energy about money. Clear and transmute that across all time, dimensions, space, and reality. Okay, please bring in a lot more light into that space. Okay, any other pattern that you duplicated of not enough money that's tied to dad, please clear and transmute that across all time, dimensions, space, and reality. And then after we clear things, I like to fill in with an energy, a positive energy. So I want you to just pretty much bring in a lot of light into those spaces. What would it take for me to be totally abundant? What would it take for me to have it all? What would it take for me to be supported? What would it take for me to have enough money? What would it take for me to have more than enough money? What would it take for me to always live in a positive viewpoint about money? Any other thing you want to fill into that space, just fill it in. Okay. And just know that you can come back to this and add more light at any time throughout the day, okay? Because once we start unleashing these patterns, they start peeling off like an onion, okay? So if you guys start feeling tightness around your body today, I want you to go inside it and ask, what's up? And then I want you to add light. And so when you're ready, just kind of open your eyes, knowing all is well. I would actually like to ask somebody a question. So who here found a pattern that they were not expecting to find? What's your name? Ann. Hi, Ann. What was your so what did you discover?
I realized that my mom had a feeling that she didn't have the ability to earn money for herself, that my parents were separated when I was very, very young, and that she saved. She was very conservative. She saved. She felt like she could be smart by retaining what she had, but didn't have the ability. There was a fear there that she didn't have the ability to bring it in for herself.
And did you find, is there any place in your life where you duplicated that and you didn't know it was from mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. No, it's like awesome. Now you can transform the whole thing. Give her a hand. Anyone else have a pattern that they weren't expecting to find?
Hi, my name is Chris.
Hi, Chris. What did you discover?
Well, I never really thought about my mother's patterns with money.
Okay.
And the pattern that emerged was that my mother was captive to my father's control over money. She grew up as an orphan.
Okay.
And my father grew up from a pattern of parents who lost all their money in the Great Depression.
Oh.
And so he grew up around scarcity.
Yep.
And so he was a big control guy.
And did you ever play out your mom's pattern about money that you're aware of?
Actually, I never realized it until now, but I did.
That's awesome. Happy discovery today, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Thank
give
you
him a
very
hand.
much.
Okay. All right. So I'll give you guys a hand for awesomeness, for finding your patterns, eliminating them.